all those AIs are going to be getting paid in Bitcoin. It doesn't really make sense for an AI to be taking US dollars over here and rupees over here. It just makes sense to have one currency. That's what Bitcoin is. Every bull run we've had distractions. In the past, it's been altcoins. It's been FTX. This bull run, it's going to be MicroStrategy, maybe some altcoins.
When we're at $1 million in Bitcoin, I think this is the moment where the general population will actually wake up.
Even if you got to one Bitcoin, and even if the price is $1 million, but you still have to go to work every day and do a 9-to-5 job for somebody else that you don't necessarily love doing, I wouldn't consider that a success. Within the next 5 or 10 years, I believe that we're not even going to know what the price of Bitcoin is. There's 3 things that have to happen in order for us to get there. The first one, in my eyes, was Wall Street. When the biggest money in the world can flow into Bitcoin and have access to this asset, that's a big deal. And that's when everything changed in January 2024. The second one is strategic reserve for the US. It doesn't really make sense to announce that they're going to do it and then let everybody else front run them. So I think the more accurate thing is going to be early 2025. Trump's going to do an executive order and write it into law that they're going to start their strategic reserve. And that's going to create such FOMO around the world for nation states. Every country is going to have to compete with that. And then the third one.
How did you start? Hello there, we are on the air. Is that how you usually start?
Yeah.
Hello out there. We are on the air. I saw some videos. I told you yesterday, I usually take like the transcripts of some videos that I find and put it out there. So in my preparation, I heard like 5-6 times behind, like, hello out there. We are on the air.
That's actually, that's not mine. I can't take credit for that. That's Stompin' Tom Connors. He was a very famous Canadian artist. And he used to do the introduction for Hockey Night in Canada here. And that's how he had a song called The Hockey Song. And that's how it started. It said, hello out there, we're on the air. It's hockey night tonight.
Oh, so you took it from the song.
Yeah, so he's an icon here in Canada, Stompin' Tom. He's dead now. He died about 5 years ago, I think. But that's kind of just a tribute to him.
Oh, nice. So he did songs, and what did he do? Like, how did he become an icon?
I think he was from the East Coast of Canada. He had a bunch of really famous songs. The hockey song was probably his most famous one because they used it on like Hockey Night in Canada here, which was a big thing. Saturday nights, they played. It's usually 2 Canadian teams in the NHL playing against each other. And so they would do Hockey Night in Canada, and he would be the introduction to it. Hello out there, we're on the air. So that's where it comes from.
Really cool, yeah. And we recorded yesterday, actually, the same thing, just like you interview me on your channel. For the people that are listening to this now, when it gets published, it's probably like a week behind or something like that. And it was really fascinating for me because I think it was the first podcast episode or like interview that I did where we started off with AI and not Bitcoin. that was really cool. So I was like, yeah, let's start also with your AI take, especially if you think AI has any impact on Bitcoin.
That's honestly what I'm most excited about for the AI stuff, is how it's going to tie in so well with Bitcoin. It just makes so much sense. Bitcoin is a currency of the internet. AI is going to use the internet for everything. I think even though there's people like me, people like you who are kind of dipping our toes into it, I don't think we've seen anywhere near the potential of what's going to come with it. And I see in the next, it'll probably happen faster than I think, but in the next 5 years, I think there'll be a lot of jobs that are replaced by AI. And I think all those AIs are going to be getting paid in Bitcoin. It doesn't really make sense for an AI to be, if it can do a job for anybody in the world, it's not going to be taking US dollars over here and, rupees over here. It just makes sense to have one currency. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a global currency on the internet, and it's going to fit so well into that. So I guess kind of my take on it is I'm very excited. I think even though there will be a lot of jobs replaced, I think it'll be the jobs that I think, as you said yesterday, it's the people that are using AI who are going to be replacing the jobs, not AI themselves. The people who can really put it into practice, learn the skills now, so when that time comes, and a lot of people are already, really going hard on it right now, and I think it's going to pay them major dividends in the coming years as we transition into that future.
Absolutely. And it's also, it's interesting when I think about AI is getting paid and AI is paying other AIs. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around that, because right now it's like, yeah, you have the AI tools, but it has to be interactive with a human being. So the human being is basically inputting and getting the output out of the AI, and the human being gets paid for that, and not directly the AI. So you also imagine there's like just an AI that has a website, and you throw things in there, you pay for that, and that naturally should be Bitcoin, because yeah, like the internet rails of the fiat system is quite bad. Or how do you imagine that future?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that they already kind of exist. I played around with it a little bit myself in terms of like they're called AI vending machines. So just think of like a vending machine where you can choose like a chocolate bar, a bag of chips, cookie, you put some money in there and you get it. With the AI vending machine, you can do the same thing. So you can say, this is an image generator, this is a transcript generator, this AI does this, and there's going to be competing AIs for each job that you want to do. And some of them will be 100 sats, some of them will be 200 sats, some of them may be a million sats. If it's a big job that there's only certain AIs that can do that job, but it looks like a vending machine, kind of obviously not in real life, but you can choose what you want to do and then choose the best AI and based on the rate, the budget that you have for it. So other than the fact that AI can't get bank accounts, like they can't go to the bank and provide verification that I am an AI, but just the fact that it'll be micropayments. I think that's kind of the key part to it, is that it wouldn't really make sense for me to hire an AI on an AI vending machine for 30 cents. The fiat rails do not facilitate that, because you have to involve my bank, your bank, the people in between for 30 cents. That's kind of what's been holding the internet back for so many years, is just the ability to do micropayments. And that's what Bitcoin's going to facilitate.
It's in general like the micropayments and the possibility to stream sats and to sap, that's I think something that is still overlooked even by the majority of Bitcoiners, that they don't get like how insane this is, that we can pay a fraction of a cent to each other per second for watching a podcast or whatever. That should have a major impact on society, on payments, how business is done. How do you imagine that?
Well, I think that Noster is one of those things. I know you're a Noster guy, and you've seen kind of the potential that's there so far. It's very small. It's very young. There's lots of work that needs to be done on it. But in terms of micropayments, like it's very easy to. It's. I always love comparing Bitcoin to everything, and you can just see how much better it is in the system that we're moving into. But like if you compare Noster to Instagram, for example, there's a lot of influencers on Instagram. They make a lot of money through ads. They have to take money in from other companies. They have to promote products. They have to spam people. Some of them it goes against their values, some don't. But on Instagram, you can like a photo, you can share it to your story, you can leave a comment. That helps a little bit, but it's very fiat. It's very illusionary. Not you don't get any sort of value in exchange for that. Whereas if you put a post on Noster, and instead of giving a like, I send you 21 sats. That's meaningful. That's value that I can send that I could not do on Instagram or any other platform. But with micropayments, that's what it facilitates. So it unlocks a whole worldwide economic marketplace of people to be not only competing to post the nicest picture, but for graphic designers, for accountants, for writers, for ghostwriters, for anybody now. It unlocks the whole worldwide marketplace with Bitcoin in the sense of either micropayments or sending Bitcoin that we couldn't do before. Like, just think about 10 years ago, if you wanted to hire somebody in Kazakhstan to build your website for you, it's pretty tough. First of all, you have to find them, which is, I mean, the internet kind of facilitated that. But then I'd have to get their banking information. I'd have to find a payment system that works for me and for them. There'd be a lot of fees probably in that. I might have to go to a Western Union to send them cash. Like, it's archaic. But there's people on the other end of that transaction who are willing to work, who are wanting to work, who have never been able to participate in the global economy yet until Bitcoin. So it's going to unlock everything. And then you think of, like, just going back to Noster for a sec, you think of a guy like Morgan Wallen, who's huge, like huge on the internet, or Taylor Swift. Let's use Taylor Swift. More people are probably familiar with her. Instead of putting a song out on Spotify where people listen to, she gets a very small cut from Spotify. She can put an exclusive brand new song on Noster. And instead of people liking and commenting and following her, they can actually send 21 sats or 2,000 sats. When one big artist does that and other artists see the capabilities now that this is possible, it's going to change everything. And we're kind of still in the transition phase right now. But I think in the future, people who are only on Spotify or Apple Music, that's just going to be a complete thing of the past where they're really locked in on that contract and they're getting just like fractions of what they're worth. This unlocks the global, it unlocks people's real potential. And that's for Taylor Swift, but that's going to be, a girl that lives down the block can do that too now without a record label, without any of that kind of stuff that we had in the old system. So it's incredible.
It's truly is, and it just opens your mind. Like there's so many things, so many small things in there. First of all, like the integration of proof of work, as you mentioned with Instagram, you just like send a digital like, which means literally nothing because like it's just a press of a button. And if you actually send sabs, obviously like if it's like 5 sats or 10 sats or 100 sats, it's not a lot of money, but it's actually proof of work. It's like it's actually energy that you send to that other person. And then also taking out the middleman of everything.
Yeah.
Basically, that's Bitcoin. Like it takes out the middleman of the banking system, where the central bank doesn't interfere with the money supply, but it also takes out the middleman of the payment rails. We don't need a MasterCard for that. We don't need all the thousands and thousands layers in between. And the third thing that you mentioned that is really big was the fact that you can transact with someone from Austria and Kazakhstan or like America and Russia. It doesn't matter where you are
Anywhere.
because it's just like a protocol. And that is so huge for me.
And the other part too, you said the banks, the payment systems, but also the middlemen, including like the record labels. That's a middleman. And now, I mean, there's probably Bitcoiners and there's artists out there who are living in Noster and Bitcoin and this world already. They're kind of building their foundation and getting ready for what's coming. But in the past, if you wanted to record an album or if you wanted to record a song, you'd have to go through a record label where they would keep. I mean, we've seen the horror stories from record labels and how much money they actually keep and basically just rob the actual artist, the one who's actually doing the work and has the talent. That's gone. Now, if I wanted to upload a song, I could use AI. I could put in some lyrics. They could spit out a song for me. I could upload it without a record label, without Spotify's permission. And if people like it, I get instantaneous feedback from that. And if people like it, that could go, I don't know if the radios would play it or not, but I could still earn, substantially more than what's available out there for the artists and creators like that.
It's hard to imagine how huge the impact of AI plus Bitcoin plus decentralized media like Nostra is. I never thought of like that trio, that combo of things together. AI and Bitcoin, yes, and Bitcoin with decentralized media, but all the three things together, it's kind of fascinating and blows my mind what's possible.
But you also, I think, need those. Right. And even just to take it one step further, like we're going to be uploading this onto YouTube, but we're going to a place where we're not going to need YouTube, where they're not going to be able to say, hey, you're not allowed to talk about this, or, here's a strike. You can't earn money this month. Whereas if I upload it to Noster and people like it, there's no ads there. They're just giving me value. I mean, the circular economy, the value for value economy has been kind of buzzwords around Bitcoin and Noster for a while. But it's going to turn into something pretty real here, I think, sooner than we think. So it's the people who are building things right now in the attention economy, the creators right now, the artists, the people who are kind of building their foundation right now, even though it's been very painful for the last couple of years, especially if you're counting on like value for value sats to put food on the table. But that's the suffering and the sacrifice that people have made up until this point. They're going to be light years ahead of everybody else who's going to be a little bit late to the party.
Do you do that, or are you relying on YouTube and Sats right now, or you still have a fiat job next to it?
No, I left my fiat job in 2021.
Oh wow, that's early.
Horrible timing. I mean, I thought it was a good timing. That's when Bitcoin was 64,000. I think I thought I was on top of the world. And it's been a sharp decline since then in terms of my income. But at the same time, I've been building stuff. So I'll just go back a little bit because while I was still working on my job, I was a CPA, like a chartered professional accountant here. So I went through school system, the college, university, it's like a master's in accounting pretty much. I worked that job for 10 years. And kind of while I was at the end of my career there, right, actually right before the pandemic, my little brother and I started building a golf company. So we started making apparel. Our main product is custom leather head covers. So I was kind of doing this in the mornings and at night, before and after work. So I had that to kind of fall back on in terms of we had some income coming in. We had products, we had a website, we had everything built out. So it wasn't a fiat job, but I still had some fiat coming in at the time. But it has been hard. Like I was thinking about it last night as I was watching the price go up like that. I was like, it's been tough, because like when I left my job, I was kind of on top of the world in terms of I had a lot of cryptos, I had a lot of Bitcoin, I had a rental house that I sold for Bitcoin, and everything was up. So I was like, you know what, I could last a few years probably if I needed to. I didn't have to sell a whole lot, thankfully, but it was there. It was kind of my insurance policy where, if I couldn't pay my mortgage that month, I would have to sell a little bit of Bitcoin. So it makes you hungry, it makes you work. And I think I've done a pretty good job in the last couple of years to kind of build that foundation where now that the price is back up, the net worth is up, the YouTube channel is doing pretty well. It's, it's good. It was worth the sacrifice. And I think you kind of have to go through that, the sacrifice and the hard times to really appreciate, what's happening right now in terms of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So
Absolutely.
to answer your question, I don't totally rely on it, but it's been a big part of, keeping me going more than anything else.
Uh, that's a. I mean, it's a tough one, but it's a great story, I think, and it's it sometimes it feels like for me it's like that there has to come something because I just quit my job, and since then like Bitcoin just went up all the time since like the last 8 9 months. I kind of timed a good timing there
You timed it
since I
better than
started
me.
podcast. Yeah, I think the price when I started my podcast was like I don't know 50 40. What was the price? I don't know. I don't even know. So it was way
How
lower than
long ago was
now.
that?
I started 20, almost a year ago. So 28th of November. I don't know what the price was back then. I actually started paying attention to the price just the last couple of weeks because it's so much on the Twitter feed. Before I did not pay attention at all. But yeah, it's also brings a topic up that I think a lot of people in Bitcoin are looking at, and a lot of people really search for that type of content. And I'm always a little bit hesitating with giving advice on that one. But I think there's some interesting things around that with retiring on Bitcoin, because as you basically did yourself, you can time this the top, and then it's like your retirement plans. If all of a sudden it crashes down to a certain level, it changes your retirement plans. So retiring on Bitcoin, because it's still so fluctuating in the purchasing power, it's a hard topic. But at the same time, I always encourage people to go about your passion and find something. So if your plan is just like I retire on Bitcoin, I don't want to do anything, you better have a lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But if your plan is like, oh, I just want to retire on Bitcoin, but in my retirement, I really want to work hard on my passion, that's a better plan. It's basically starting a business. So I guess on that, what advice do you have on retiring on Bitcoin as you made it yourself?
Well, I kind of talked about this on my show this morning, actually, and I was thinking about this in the last week. I thought, there's kind of three types of people right now in the current state of where we are. The first one, the majority of people, where they're going to a 9 to 5 job, they're earning fiat, they're spending fiat, they're saving in fiat, they're living in that world still, and that's the majority of people. The second group would be the people who are going a 9 to 5 job, getting paid in fiat, but converting that every time they get paid or a portion of it into Bitcoin. So they're saving in Bitcoin, they're earning fiat. So that's the second group. The third group is the people who are doing their own thing, starting a business, following whatever they are excited about. They're earning Bitcoin, they're earning some fiat, they're converting into Bitcoin, but they're focusing their time on freedom more so than anything. And I think that that's what Bitcoin provides. I think instead of like a monetary unit or a fiat price, it's freedom because it's buying you time. So I think that too many people are still in the 9 to 5. They think that they're going to be able to, hit X amount of Bitcoin, like we'll get to 1 Bitcoin, then they can retire. But I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think that that's what people should be striving for. And so going back to like the three categories of people, the third type of person there, the person who started their own business, focused on Bitcoin, and is earning Sats flow every month. Whatever they're doing, they're converting fiat into Sats, or they have a Zap.stream or a Noster, they're earning Sats. But I think that more people should be focusing on that because, even if you got to 1 Bitcoin and even if the price is $1 million, but you still have to go to work every day and do a 9 to 5 job for somebody else that you don't necessarily love doing, I wouldn't consider that a success personally. Even though you have a bunch of Bitcoin on the cold card or the Bitbox or whatever you have, I don't think that that's a success. I think that more people should be focused on the freedom aspect of it. So you're still adding value, you're still doing what you want to do, you're helping people, but it's on your own schedule, right? And so even though these last couple of years for me have been incredibly tough financially, I knew what was coming here. I mean, I thought I did anyways. It turned out to be right. But I knew that the hard work and like because if you're earning fiat, converting it to Bitcoin, you're going to end up with more Bitcoin than somebody who's just kind of starting their own thing, scraping away. But I think that the things I've done in the last couple of years in terms of setting it up where I can do, I'm flexible with my time. I'm doing stuff I enjoy. I'm earning a Sats flow every month. I think that over the long run, that's going to be a much better path. Even though short term it hurt, long term, I think that's the play. So people are out there who, if you have a 9 to 5 job, just start thinking about things that you enjoy doing, because the good news about everything we talked about so far is that you're going to be able to do that, right? I foresee a future where the whole corporate structure changes in terms of there's not going to be bosses, there's not going to be managers, there's not going to be a whole bunch of fat in every corporation. Most people are going to be working for themselves and probably earning Bitcoin. So if you can take a short-term hit and, even if you have to put your Bitcoin stacking on the side for a little while here, if you can start building something that you enjoy doing, there's so many tools for that now. And I think that that's the future. So if you can start getting ahead of that when the time comes, I think you're going to be in a much better place.
I 100% agree. And just for the people listening, I would have had more Bitcoin right now if I would have stayed in my fiat job the last 8 months. But what I wouldn't have is the freedom to go last week to El Salvador and just spend the week there. And I did not needed holidays for that because I just worked there a little bit. And now because I'm in podcasting business, kind of like a Bitcoin conference is my work, but just doesn't feel like that. I will be in Abu Dhabi in 2 weeks. It's just once you have your own schedule, you cannot even imagine going back. So like for me, it's not even in my mind. I last time a friend of mine asked me that. He's like, how much money would your old company have to give you to reconsider joining? And I was like, I don't know if the amount they would have to pay actually makes sense for them to pay, but I don't know if there's even such a thing, because I don't want to put a price tag on my freedom if I don't have to. If I'm in that position of not having to give up my freedom, why would I? So why would I do it for money? Yes, okay, I have more money, but where's my time gone? And then there's
Exactly.
this only thing, the only thing that is more valuable than Bitcoin is your own freaking time, because you will die at some point. I mean, there are some people that say we will not die and we will live longer, but I don't want to get into that. But I think most likely we're all gonna die at some point, and I think it's part of life. But it will it changes your life and your perspective in just a very short amount of time. Being self-reliant, also being self-reliant changes your relationship to money. I already look differently at money than most people because of Bitcoin, but now with being self-employed, I look so different on money, because I just don't want to spend any money that doesn't make that I don't need to spend, or that I love to spend, or that I need for the business. So it completely changes the things. But you said you kind of see this 9 to 5 dying. I hear that a lot. Do you think that the freelancing 1, 2, 3, 4 person companies and smaller units and smaller startups with like maximum of like 20, 30 people maybe is the future to go, and 9 to 5 will almost completely be gone?
Yeah, mostly because we have the ability now. And as bad as the pandemic was for a lot of people, in a lot of ways, but it really much, or it very much introduced the fact that we can work from anywhere now. You don't have to be in the office. And I still think that there is something there in terms of being around people, being around that energy, in terms of generating ideas. If that's what your business is, if you need that, it is very important to be face to face with people. But I think that, just think about the people who are spending hours every single day driving to commuting to their work. And I know that some people still are, but like, I think that that's fading away. We just talked about the scarcity of time and how important that is. You're spending 2.5, 3 hours every day in traffic, driving to a job that you don't love, just so you can feed yourself. Like, that's kind of what the system has created. That's what it turned us into. But the technology now allows for anybody to work from anywhere. And Bitcoin's going to be the payment rails that connects everybody and unlocks that economy that we could not have before. So if I wanted to go, all you have to do is just think back like 10 years ago, where the place that I live in now, we grew up here, like my parents had a cabin here. And even up until 5 years ago, we didn't have internet here. Like, we would come out here for the summer. We had a satellite dish to watch TV eventually, but we never had internet. There was no Wi-Fi. There was none of that. This wasn't an option 5 years ago. And so I think the whole landscape, in terms of people wanting to, working where they want to, being more with their kids or their family or their dog or whatever, it just makes too much sense now. And so, if your boss says no to that, if you say, I can work from home a couple of days a week, if they say no, corporate policies, everybody's got to be in the office, you say, okay, well, I have these skills that I've accrued through the years. I know that now with the internet and with the unlocked economy that we have, I can just contract my work out to whoever I want to. I can get onto Noster. I can get onto a whole bunch of different platforms and just say, like, you can kind of design your own life now. That was never an option 5 years ago.
And it's kind of the media plus having Bitcoin kind of unlocks the vision of the sovereign individual. There's the first time I realized that was AirBTC. I don't know if you know the company AirBTC. It's basically Airbnb, but Bitcoin only. The same concept. Really nice. And I interviewed the CEO of them, and they operate truly Bitcoin only. So they only get paid in Bitcoin, and they only pay every supplier, vendor, and people involved in Bitcoin. With that, they don't need a home. They don't need a home for that business, because it's just a website huge. And Bitcoin.
And that changes everything, right? And, I think people will eventually get there. It'll take a while for all businesses to be all Bitcoin. And I just don't know if that's a reality for, our lifetime or not. But at the same time, like, the people who are doing that, the people who have taken the time and put in the work to learn how to do that. And the key there is that they're obviously doing high enough quality work that they can say that to their customers. Because if they were just like another company with another product, their customers would say, okay, well, we're not going to get on this Bitcoin thing. We'll just find somebody else we can pay fiat to. Like, that's way too complex. But obviously they're doing good enough work where they're in such demand that they have the ability to do that. And I think that that's something that every Bitcoiner should be striving for. And we're talking about your podcast and the stuff I'm doing, but you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into thinking about just Bitcoin businesses. Like whatever it is that you do, if you're a 9 to 5 employee, you have a lot of value and you've put in a lot of work in terms of accruing those skills. So just put those to work, just except for working, instead of working for somebody else with their schedule, with their rules, you just apply those same skills and value that you have, but you have the whole world to offer it to now. And so that's kind of the idea there. It doesn't have to be in Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be a podcast. It just start change your thinking in terms of, in 2 years from now, I'm going to be my own boss, whether I'm replaced by AI or I just leave. But in 2 years from now, I'm going to be my own boss. So in the mornings, at night, whenever you have free chance, just start thinking about what your business would look like, who your customers would be, what you need to roll that out, because it's coming.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the Bitbox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your Bitbox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. And it ties perfectly into that. I think 40% was the number. Like there's this zombie companies topic where like a lot of companies are just existing because they can benefit from the fiat system and because they are big, and a lot of those companies just wouldn't exist on a hard money proof of work standard like Bitcoin, and this will change a lot. I see it even outside of the Bitcoin community, to be honest, with friends that just like quit their job and try their own thing, or even, as you just said, they took a software developer. He worked for a big company and he was really unsatisfied with how things were going there. And especially with software development, it's so easy these days. And he just went ahead and is now a freelancer. And he just after, what was it, like 4 months, he earned 50% more and had, instead of one income, 3 incomes, and worked the same hours, and he could be wherever he wants to be. And he just took what you just said into action of like quitting that 9 to 5, putting on a little bit more risk, a little bit more self-responsibility, and diversified his income stream and was his own boss. And this has nothing to do with Bitcoin even. Bitcoin makes things easier and gives you maybe a cushion and makes also the global transition better, but that's possible for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something that we need to really switch our mindset around, is like, you want to, whether you're talking about, I don't know, Bitcoin storage, whether you're talking about important data, whether you're talking about your income stream, You never want to have one single point of failure, right? So with Bitcoin storage, that's a passphrase, or that's a decoy wallet, or that's a multi-signature setup. With your data, that means you have a backup hard drive and you back that up. A couple times I've been on the other side of that where it's not very pretty, but that's a single point of failure. If you have everything on your phone or your computer or on one hard drive, that's a single point of failure. And one of my favorite quotes that I've kind of tried to implement into my own life is that two is one and one is none, which means if you have one of anything, it's zero, because it could be taken away instantly. You could lose it. Something could happen to it. That's zero. If you have two, that's one. If you have one, that's none. So, and you apply that to your income streams too, right? If you got one income stream, all of a sudden that disappears, you're on the streets, or you know, you're in bankruptcy. Whereas if you have a couple of different streams of income, whether that's dividend income in the old system, whether that's I like to think about it, and I forget who taught me this concept, but think about it like a wheel, right? And every spoke within that wheel is a different stream of income. And you want to get as many spokes on that wheel as possible, as whatever amount they are. A big spoke could be like your main income, but then you have in a Bitcoiner's life, that could be maybe you do a live stream once a week on Zapstream. That's another flow of that's another spoke on there. Or you just listen to a podcast every day on Fountain, and that's another income stream there. As big or little as they are, the more of those spokes on that wheel you have, the less reliant you are on other ones. And that really accumulates over time. The more you can add to that, regardless of what the amount is, especially when you're talking Bitcoin, that adds up. And that's kind of what you want to design your life around, is that wheel of income where you have a whole bunch of different sources of income coming in. And you're not as reliant. That eliminates your single point of failure.
It's so true. Is that maybe kind of the next Bitcoin chapter of like what's happening? I think a lot about what's the next Bitcoin story over the next like 5 to 10 years. We had in the beginning, it was just like a small nerdy stuff that only a very, very handful of people knew about. Then it kind of got a little bit more popular. At some point, they got publicly traded companies, now countries, now the big narrative around that is like nation state, FOMO, strategic reserve, and all that things. What is for you kind of the next big chapter of Bitcoin? If this is like an headline written over is like the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think is like the next narrative?
So I think that within the next 5 or 10 years, and this might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but just say 5, 10, 15, somewhere in the not so distant future. I believe that we're not even going to know what the price of Bitcoin is. And the reason I say that, I think that there's three things that have to happen in order for us to get there. The first one, in my eyes, was Wall Street. When the biggest money in the world can flow into Bitcoin and have access to this asset, that's a big deal. And that's when everything changed in January 2024. So that one's done. The second one, and I'm going off my memory here, but the second one is strategic reserve for the U.S. The U.S. is the most influential country in the world. And when Trump, there's a lot of people, this hasn't been priced in at all yet, because I think most people really believe that he's bluffing on it and it's not going to happen. I think the poly market on it is like 56% yes, which is still a good sign, but it's definitely not priced in yet. I would put it more towards, this is just my opinion, but I would say it's more towards 95%. They just can't go back on it now, because it's going through the House or the Senate through the Lummis bill. And that's going to take, 6 months or whatever. But Trump's a businessman. As much as people discredit him, his intelligence, he's a businessman. He knows how this stuff works. It doesn't really make sense to announce that they're going to do it and then let everybody else front run them. So I think the more accurate thing is going to be early 2025. Trump's going to do an executive order and write it into law that they're going to start their strategic reserve. And that's going to, as you mentioned, create such FOMO around the world for nation states. Every country is going to have to compete with that. So they're going to start. Corporations, we've seen like 5 or 6 corporations this week who have announced that they're adding Bitcoin to their treasury. And then obviously that's going to flow down to the retail market. So that's number 2. Number 2 is the U.S., probably the U.S., implements a strategic reserve. And then the third one is that when it hits $1 million, when Bitcoin gets to $1 million, that's when one sat equals 1 cent. And I think even at 90, wherever we are right now, people still see Bitcoin as like something that's so far out of reach that they just don't even pay any attention to it. They see that $90,000. They're like, well, I don't even have $90 in my bank account, so I'm not going to pay any sort of attention to that. But when one sat equals 1 cent, or when Bitcoin hits $1 million, then, it's going to go from 1 cent to 2 cents to 5 cents, like a penny stock would. Right. And that's when everybody's coming in. That's when everybody's, paying attention now, because they can get these. They won't even, that's why I said I don't think they'll know what a Bitcoin even costs anymore. We'll know when it's going from 1 cent to 2 cent to 5 cents. That's jumping up hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin price. But in sats, it's only 1 cent at a time. So those three things I think are really going to, and whenever it plays out, I think it's going to happen pretty fast, much faster than people think. I shared an analogy here, and if you got 30 seconds for me to read it here, I'll
Of course. Go ahead.
I'll explain kind of the logic on that. And I know Bitcoiners have heard the term gradually then suddenly before.
I think Parker Lewis was the one that kind of popularized that, right?
Yes. So this is an analogy I saw on Noster actually the other day. So the analogy was, it's based on exponential growth, like gradually then suddenly, how this whole thing plays out. So the analogy, and I'm going to be reading this. So imagine a football stadium being filled with water. Every minute, one drop is added. The number of drops doubles every minute. So it goes from 1 drop to 2 drops to 4 to 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. How long do you think it would take to fill the entire stadium? A day, a week, a year? I'll let you answer.
Every minute or every second is a drop added, or?
Every minute, and it doubles. So it goes from 1 drop to 2 drops to 4 to 8.
Oh man, I think that's pretty fast, but I can only guess here because my brain cannot comprehend exponential growth. I did that example with like seconds and how many minutes and days is it. I would say a day, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair guess. It's 50 minutes, 50.
In 1 hour.
But the crazy part about it is how full do you think it would be after 45 minutes? So it completely fills up after 50, but what percentage do you think it is after 45 minutes?
Oh man. Let's say 70%.
That's what it said most would guess 70 to 90%, but after 45 minutes, the stadium is only 7% full.
Wait, 7? I thought maybe 50%, but then I thought like 50% is lower. 7%. Wow.
So in the final 5 minutes, the stadium goes from 7% full to 100% full. So in the last 5 minutes there, that's when 93% of the stadium fills up, in the final 5 minutes. And I think that we're going to go through the exact same kind of thing in Bitcoin.
That's crazy. I just want to briefly summarize that. You have a football stadium. Every minute you add a drop, and every minute you don't add one drop, like it doubles. Like the first minute is 1 drop, the second minute is 2 drops, and so forth. And after 45 minutes, you have 7%. And if you just stop there and ask people, "Oh, when will it be finished?" Most people will say, "Oh, okay, 7% after 45 minutes." Maybe will be some
head, right?
Yeah, and then we're like, maybe like half a day or maybe 2 days, whatever. But then it's full after 50 minutes, just like a few more minutes, and it goes from 7% to full 100%. It kind of opens your eyes to what Bitcoin can actually do. I also have that theory that when we are at $1 million in Bitcoin, I think this is the moment where the general population will actually wake up. I think before that, maybe 10% are actually aware of Bitcoin. Now it's like, I don't know, maybe 1% of the population is a little bit aware of it. Like there are a lot of people, like hundreds of millions of people in Bitcoin when you count everything in there with the ETFs and everything. But how many people actually have a significant amount in Bitcoin? Like how many people are there in the world that have over 50% of their net worth in Bitcoin? 200,000, 300,000, I don't know, maybe a million. No clue about that number, but I think it's a very low number. And I think at a million, we're still like very low. But then you say like with the sense and with the public perception, and we switch slowly from looking at Bitcoin to looking at Sats. This could actually be this like suddenly moment. So you think like the $1 million Bitcoin is kind of this suddenly moment, or is it occurring before the $1 million price?
I think the million the okay, what's this analogy? So I think the $1 million is at the 45-minute mark, where if you think of a drop, just like a Bitcoiner coming into Bitcoin, adopting Bitcoin, up until the 7%, but once it hits that, that's when it starts going from 7 to 100. And that's when we don't know what the price of Bitcoin is. Because if you think about what it looks like at that time, where one sat equals 1 cent, and then 2 cents, and then people are like, okay, well, I can actually afford to get, like, before this gets to, 1 sat equals $1, I can get a lot of these now. Like, it's just human psychology. It's how people see things. So then it goes from 1 cent to 50 cents, just like a penny stock would, to a dollar. And then it's so at a dollar for 1 sat, that's $100 million Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden it's $1.20, and then $5, and then that's $500 million Bitcoin, right? And that's how you get to like these large numbers. You hear people talk about this, and you're like, well, how could it ever go from 90,000 to, or 50,000, even 50,000 to $1 billion? That doesn't even make sense. But if you understand how exponential growth works and how human psychology ties into this, and you combine that with an asset, like it's similar to a penny stock in terms of the human psychology aspect of it, but it's so much different because we've never had an asset with a scarce asset with a fixed supply like Bitcoin is, that's global, that can be sent anywhere, that has zero friction. There's never been anything like this before.
That's so true, and I think that's what a lot of people try to do. They try to model Bitcoin around something that is already existing in the past, but you cannot model Bitcoin to anything. It's just we never had true scarcity. And we definitely never had true scarcity in the digital age. So you just have no clue what's going on. And there's all those money flooding in. And you just have like this fixed layer that is just not giving up. And the supply just stays the same no matter what happens. Yeah, it's nobody is bullish enough on Bitcoin.
No, and nobody is. And when you see that vision of the future, and you actually, it's so much different than our brains are used to thinking like. But when you see the world, when you see the vision for that, and that's why these last couple of years I talked about, they've been tough, obviously financially. When you leave your job and you start doing your own thing, it's a risk, it's a big jump. And especially as when you leave and the price goes down and your net worth goes down with it, meanwhile you're not bringing a whole lot in. But when you see that future, when you see the vision, you understand what's coming here, then, it makes the time I spend working in this stuff, it makes sense to me. It wouldn't make sense to a whole lot of people who don't see that same vision of the future. But like I do a live show every morning on YouTube and Zapstream. And, usually there's, let's say 10,000 sats that people zap in every show. So it doesn't seem like much because that's like $10. So I'm like, okay, well, I just worked for 2 hours. I got $10 worth of tips. It doesn't really make sense. But then if you see, like, if I'm going to be holding that for a long time, the Bitcoin is the perfect battery. It stores your energy, and unless there's no leaks. That's what Saylor talks about all the time. Unlike fiat, unlike this other system we have, there's no leaks there. So you put that energy into a battery. Let's say take those 10,000 sats, fast forward 10 years, where 1 sat equals $1. Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. I'm getting paid $10,000 per hour. And so if you're actually living in the future in that sense, and I kind of, I give a lot of credit to Jeff Booth for this, because he changed my whole perception of the future and thinking in a Bitcoin standard instead of the fiat world. We're programmed. We're a fish born into water in the fiat system. And it's really hard to break out of that, even if you've been immersed in Bitcoin for a long time. But if you're living in the future, then you understand how valuable those sats are. There's no leaks in those sats.
And that's a very true point. And then I think people still don't know. It's such a, if you say it, it sounds so easy. It's like, okay, there's no leak, and it cannot go anywhere, and it's like fixed supply. but I think on a brain level, people have a hard time wrapping their hand around what this actually means. And when Sailor says like, "Oh, like why would you diversify from this perfect steel ship and go to
Yes.
do I don't know 20% of your assets to this wooden ship? Like, why would you go there if you know it has such a high risk of going down? And why wouldn't you put everything in the good ship?" One thing that I'm wondering, how important do you think is price to the whole story? I think we Bitcoin, I kind of try to like, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin and the price doesn't matter. But then all the newbies come because of the price, and it's kind of the perfect marketing tool for Bitcoin. How important is the price, and talking about the price also for you?
Yes. So, I mean, Satoshi designed Bitcoin. Like, that's why I don't think that Bitcoin was one person. I think it was a very, very well thought out group of people with crystal clear vision of the future. And they did not leave, there was no leaks in the plan of Satoshi. And so, even the fact of the markets and human psychology and how that all ties into it, like as you said, every 4 years with the bull cycle, or at least up until this point, there every 4 years there's a whole new influx of Bitcoiners coming in, and we haven't really seen that even this bull run yet. But a lot of them will buy Bitcoin. They'll hold it. They'll just see it as a speculative asset. They want to be part of this. They see the number going up, and I would say that 80% of those people will probably fall off. They'll either sell early. They'll over leverage themselves. They'll have to sell it at a lower price. That'll turn them off Bitcoin for a while. But there's usually 10 or 20% of Bitcoiners who get through that cycle. And those are the ones who are doing podcasts now. And they're the ones who are telling their friends about it and educating anybody who wants to listen to them about it. And that's the whole foundation. And that's what the cycles create. That's what the fiat price creates, is the demand, the hardened Bitcoiners that stick around and continue to grow this thing. It's a grassroots thing. It's crazy to think about that. There's no marketing team, there's no CEO, there's nobody here. This is just people basically memeing this thing into existence, right? Because like for 16 years, we've had such a negative marketing against Bitcoin. And you can point to the environment, the drug dealers, the trafficking, all that kind of stuff. All they've been able to do for the last 16 years is just throw stuff at it. And some of it sticks for a little while, but it eventually just falls off. And against all that, we've managed to grow it to $1 trillion asset, soon to be $2 trillion asset, with absolutely no signs of slowing down. And so it's important to the fiat price. It's just, that's how humans are, right? They everything right now is priced in US dollars. All assets on earth are pretty much priced in US dollars. But the problem with pricing things, and this is why society, in my opinion, is so broken right now, is because we're measuring everything in the world, whether that's our time, our houses, our land, gold. Everything is being compared to a currency that's illusionary in a sense, because we don't know how many US dollars are out there. They tell us that there's this figure here, approximately, but they've never been audited before. The Federal Reserve, the banks of each country, they never get audited. So we're trusting the fact that these figures are accurate, but we have no idea. There could be double, there could be 10x that. We have no idea. And so when you're measuring every asset on earth against a currency that's broken, nothing makes sense. And we don't know how many there are today. We don't know how many there's going to be in 10 years from now, because governments change and people change that. And that's what happens when you give a small group of people the ability to create money. But with Bitcoin, you replace Bitcoin with the US dollar that's why it reprices everything. That's the denominator where it's fixed. We know how much there is today. You can go on the website right now to see how many Bitcoin are out there. There's a supply schedule that's known. So in 10 years from now, we know how many Bitcoin are going to exist. And so you can plan better, you can prepare, you can do everything much more accurately when you have a hard denominator, which we've never had before in our lifetime, or in the last 100 years at least.
You mentioned something very interesting and important. I think we memed this thing into existence. And I truly think that the new warfare is kind of information warfare. And the new soldiers are like, meme creators, content creators, moderators, podcast hosts, whatever. You can't do that, but we are in that information warfare where we fight for what's right and what's wrong, what's the actual misinformation, what's not actual misinformation, and I think that's kind of like a really interesting way to look at that. With we can now meme and digital money into the hands of BlackRock. Like, how amazing is that?
Well, I mean, it's just a form of communication that everybody speaks now. It's like a whole new language, right? And in order for things to work, in order to, that's what we just talked about, the price of fiat in terms of getting interest in things. Like, people have to see the value in this. They see the number going up, so they want to be part of that. But in order to, if you have a Bitcoin today and you want to hold on to that Bitcoin for the next 20, 50 years and pass it on to your generations of family, like it requires you to actually care. It requires that interest to learn and to have the conviction, because there's going to be, I'll put this one on hold for a second, but you're going to be very tempted to sell, and it's going to crash, and you're going to be tempted to sell that way. And so you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the conviction we're very lucky to be here right now, but not everybody's going to get through this. The people who don't have the conviction over Bitcoin right now are going to get rid of their Bitcoin. It's going to go into the BlackRock vacuum. So those memes are just kind of like the language of like, okay, maybe this is kind of interesting. Maybe, instead of reading a 20-page document of why Bitcoin works, compare the Federal Reserve, never been audited in 90 years. It's a meme, and people can understand that much more effectively than having to show them a 20-page document on what Bitcoin is and why we think it'll be successful. So just going back to why I think people will be tempted to sell here is because with the scarce fixed asset like Bitcoin, BlackRock, their only move here, they're obviously going to try to get as much Bitcoin as they can. They've been doing it for 11 months now, and they're showing no signs of stopping. And there's going to come a point where they run out of Bitcoin to buy. And so what they're going to do, the only reason they're going to get Bitcoin from me or from you is to try to tempt us to sell. So they're going to be more than happy to run up the price. Their clients are going to be happy. Their management fee on their portfolios, their funds are going to go up. And that's going to be the only way that they're going to be able to get our Bitcoin, is by running the price up. So people are going to be tempted to sell. People are going to get in at 80K, 90K, 100K. It's going to go up to 200, 300, 400. And all those people are going to sell. And it's just going to go right into the BlackRock vacuum. And that's what they want. Because you have to consider here that they don't have a money printer, but they pretty much have unlimited capital. So they don't care what the price is, but they know how much Bitcoin there's left. And that's their main thing right now, is they want to get as much of that Bitcoin as they can, and they don't care what the price is.
I'm kind of amazed how good BlackRock understands Bitcoin and how good they also portray that in their presentations. Like they actually did the research deeply. They actually understand what the Bitcoin community is. And I think they have done years worth of researching behind the scenes before they even started to applying. So they're not fucking around. They're really coming in, and they have a game plan, and they want to acquire all the Bitcoin. So that's take example on BlackRock. Just like make a game plan, don't sell, buy as much as you can, and make a how should I say it? Not a game plan, but yeah, something like strategy. A game plan strategy. Yeah, exactly.
You have to be thinking about that stuff, and I think that that's one message that I try to communicate as often as I can on the show, is like, buying's the easy part. Buying Bitcoin is the easy part. As much as people are intimidated by it, and it's just like, it's so easy to do now. But holding it in and having it in 20 years from now and gaining the knowledge and conviction to actually get through the highs and the lows, that's the hard part. And I think that people actually have to be thinking through this stuff, whether it's their Bitcoin security, whether that's their inheritance planning. Like most Bitcoiners, if most Bitcoiners got hit by a bus tomorrow, their Bitcoin would be gone. Nobody would get that ever again, which is good for Bitcoin, good for Bitcoiners, but terrible for their family. Like, going back to the battery analogy, where I take my time, I take my energy, I take my value, and I want to store it in a battery that's going to be there in 100 years from now. and I want to pass that on to my family. And if you're so focused on buying and price watching and leveraging with MicroStrategy, and you fail to actually put a plan in place where if something were to happen to you, your family can get access to that, that's just I consider it a completely wasted life, because you took everything that you've ever done, you put it into the best battery ever. And because you were too lazy or too stubborn to set up an inheritance plan or have something in place, and now nobody has that because the average age is 80 and you're 30 years old, you thought you had 50 more years. Like, life happens very fast, and when we least expect it to. So with fiat, it's whatever. If somebody else can get a hold of it somehow. With Bitcoin, you can't do that.
That's so true. I love that a lot. Really cool. Maybe on that note, besides the inheritance plan, what advice do you have for people, especially for the people that entered in the bear market, and for them it's like the first ever bull market? What advice do you have for them entering now, maybe in a really crazy, big, flashy bull run?
Flashy, yeah, it's going to be flashy. Two things. Just going along, I'll start with that, with the flashy part. There's going to be distractions. Every bull run we've had has had distractions. In the past, it's been altcoins, it's been FTX. This bull run, it's going to be MicroStrategy, maybe some altcoins, Solana maybe. And those are just distractions. And the thing that leads everybody here is Bitcoin. That's the thing that people should be focused on, is Bitcoin. But instead of, instead of 100% return this year, or 150 or whatever we're at so far in 2024, 150% isn't good enough for me. So I'm actually going to try to go 300% or 500%. And I'm going to be distracted by this. Instead of focusing my time and energy on learning it, securing it, protecting it, I'm going to go buy this Shiba Inu coin or 5x MicroStrategy leverage play, because I want things faster than they're coming right now. So those are the distractions. People get distracted every cycle. They get burned usually, but you kind of have to touch the stove to get burned before you learn. And that's kind of part of my show, is I want to prevent people from having to touch the stove by just giving so many dire warnings of what's coming. And so they can have a little better understanding of what's kind of happening, big picture. But the second piece of advice would be to secure it, right? Because Bitcoin itself, if you do it properly, it is the best battery. It is the best place to store your time and energy. But if you're not securing it properly, that'll be the difference between you having it in 20 years and not. So I usually tell people to take 5% of their stack, their portfolio in Bitcoin, and invest in security. And people might think that that's pretty high, but it's a one-time thing. It's not like a management fee where you pay it every month or every year to your financial advisor, or you pay bank fees every year to your banker every month. It's a one-time thing. You set it up, you secure it. It might be some ongoing cost, but not 5% of it. So if you got $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, you take $50, you probably don't need anything at that point. You maybe get a phone wallet, you maybe just download Sparrow. $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, you're probably fine. You get $100,000 worth of Bitcoin though, or one Bitcoin in this sense, you should be taking at least $5,000 and investing either your time or your own money into securing that. Because just think about it. And I know me and you talked about this on my show yesterday, but like if you compare it to banks, like think about a bank. They have security cameras, they have security guards, they have IT teams, they have Brinks trucks, they have all this stuff to protect the money that's in their bank, right? And so you're like, okay, well, I'm not a bank, but then you consider like three things. Number one, the banks have insurance. So even if somebody broke in, robbed a bank, they can get the money back probably the next week. They have insurance. Number two, they're holding other people's money. It doesn't mean as much to them. And number three is that they're holding fake money. They're holding fiat with leaks everywhere that's disintegrating before our eyes. You're holding Bitcoin, which is a real asset. You don't have any insurance on that Bitcoin, probably, unless I missed something here, but I don't have any insurance on my Bitcoin. And what was the other one? Insurance. And it's yours. You're not holding somebody else's money. You're holding your own money. You're holding the wealth that you're going to have in your family for generations to come. So not only should you be securing it just as well as a bank does, in my opinion, I think you should be higher than the bank security for it.
Yeah. By the way, there's a German friend of mine. I think he has the world's first Bitcoin insurance. I don't know
Oh,
what
really?
exactly this is, but
It's
I
coming for
think
sure.
yeah, I think he insures if you have it on a hardware wallet, and he insures against like fire damage and stuff like that. But it's a hard business model. I feel
It is
feel
because
like.
how do you really prove that you don't have it anymore?
Yeah, true. And so like, there's a lot of moving pieces. But I actually I scheduled a call with him, so I will have him on the podcast because I was really curious because I never heard that before, and it's such a normal thing to do. Usually, an insurance for money or insurance for treasure or something like that. But yeah, it's will be interesting on a hardware wallet to insure that. And I heard the price like $3 a month or something like that. So I was like, yeah. I don't know if there's a lot of Bitcoin on there, could be a bad business model. But yeah, so sorry for that tangent. But you're 100% right. We should take care really good about our Bitcoin, and also being aware of when you have a lot of Bitcoin, maybe consider spending some money to educate yourself, to invest in good hardware and good software that you can actually use. Use the open source ones. If you don't want to do it, try to buy an advisor, try to buy a service that fit you. But I would encourage everyone to at least try to educate yourself. Like take out a weekend, take out a week where like, oh, let's dive into that topic. There is no exemptions, no matter how young or old you are. It's possible if you can read and if you can operate a computer, you can operate your own self custody. There's just no excuse to that, and I think it's a great message, especially for the bull market. And as you said also yesterday on your podcast, treat it as it would be 10x the value from the day, then people are more prone to that. So if you have now one Bitcoin, consider that Bitcoin to be a million, because we are now almost at 100K. Consider that Bitcoin already being worth $1 million. Maybe you take it a little bit more serious, and also the inheritance, because I think a lot of Bitcoiners don't have a real inheritance plan, and the family has no clue on how to access their Bitcoin. So educate your family, even though maybe they don't get Bitcoin, but educate them on how they would get to your Bitcoin, or set
Yes.
some professional things out there. Are a lot of services out there. So yeah, educate yourself in this bull market.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one. And you're absolutely right. I think that you're probably not going to go from zero to a multi-signature setup in a weekend. But the one thing that you can do is just actually get a baseline understanding of it. So let's say you're a physicist or a doctor, and you're like, okay, well, I'm a doctor, so I'm pretty smart. I should be able to figure this out myself. This can't be too complex. So you're like, okay, well, would I rather spend $5,000 or would I rather take, it'll probably take me 10, 20 hours. You have to value your time as if you were going to work instead. So you have to factor in how many hours you'd have to spend to get to the point of understanding it, of getting the devices, of having things perfect. If that's 20 hours and you make $500 an hour, like that's well above the $5,000 threshold. Where is if you just get a baseline understanding of it, so you can at least navigate, and then you hire somebody to help you with it, you save time and you save actual money, right? Because you have to value your time in terms of the learning process. And then once you have some Bitcoin, you have it secured, a baseline at least. And then as time goes on, you get more Bitcoin, you get a better understanding. That's when you move to a passphrase. That's when you move to a multi-signature. Like you have to take this slow. You have to have a baseline. You have to secure it, but you have to take it slow. And kind of what you were saying there along the lines of 10x, like just think about if you had a cold card and you're just kind of loosey goosey with it. Maybe it's in your safe, maybe it's on your desk, maybe it's on your bed stand. And we just talked about 20 minutes ago where we're going to move into a situation where Bitcoin's probably going to be $1 million. It could be $100 million one day. Nothing's going to change in that Bitcoin other than the fiat price and everything else being repriced by that. So if you had a briefcase full of $1 million in cash or $100 million in cash, would you leave that in your safe? Would you leave that on your desk? Would you leave that on your kitchen table? Probably not. You probably wouldn't even have it at your house. You'd be paying somebody to look after that. And I think that just because of the illusion that they feed us that this thing's only worth this right now, The only thing that's going to change that is time. And as time goes on, people are going to see the impacts of that, and it's going to play out.
100%. We're coming closer to the end, so I want to have, before we come to the question that I ask all the time and the end routine question, one more thing that I'm really curious always about. How did Bitcoin change you? Like, what did Bitcoin impact in your life, if anything at all?
I mean, it's changed everything in my life, everything. And that's what Bitcoin does. It's going to reprice everything. And it basically takes the old system that we had and flips it on its head, the exact opposite of everything that we've ever known before. But in terms of like the first thing, I was an accountant. And so I saw, once I realized what Bitcoin was, once I saw an open, permissionless ledger that anybody could access at any time, that's basically what accountants do. We look at ledgers, we look at transactions, we verify them. Bitcoin itself is like the next progression of accounting. It's the triple entry accounting, where you have debits and credits, and I'm probably going to lose some people here, but then you keep track of everything. You owe somebody, you have money, you keep track of that through a double entry accounting system. And the thing you need on top of that, though, is auditors. So public companies, if they have debits and credits and they have all their financial records, you need an auditor to come in and make sure that that's accurate. That's what accountants do, or auditors anyways. But with Bitcoin, once I realized that the network itself is just a ledger, it keeps track of who has what, and every 10 minutes, the network audits itself. So that was my first, like, okay, I'm, accounting's probably going to be around in 10 years, but my job might not be. This industry is going to look completely different. And I don't know what I'm going to do in Bitcoin. I have no idea, but I know that I have to be part of this because I could see it, that this is going to change everything about the world, including the industry that I was in. And I had to be part of it. And since then, it's literally changed every aspect of my thinking, of my day-to-day, my spending habits, my health, everything. So that's the answer. It's changed everything.
I love that. It changes a lot in people's life, and it's a great insight that you also got like Bitcoin because of that accounting, and you're like, oh, like my job might be around and like that. Really, really cool. Perfect. And one question that each and every one of my guests gets: what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can you learn from me? Well, my channel's called the 88 Sats channel. Right? Everybody asks why it's called that, and the reason is because we had our golf company, King Golf. KNG Golf. And so we had a decent sized audience of golfers, of people that we knew on Instagram. And I was getting into Bitcoin. And I was like, I'm tired of this narrative around, very short time preference. People see it as like this Ponzi scheme or number go up very fast, you cash out. I want to change the perception here. So I made it my goal to try to find 88 people. That's what we announced. We're going to try to find 88 people. Everybody's going to contribute some Bitcoin. We're going to set up a multi-signature wallet, and we're going to have a 10-year goal. We're going to hold on to this Bitcoin for 10 years. And at the end of it, we're going to buy our own golf course. So that was the idea there. And I thought this might happen, this might not. I throw a lot of ideas at the wall. Some stick, some don't. But within 2 months, I think we had 88 people with Bitcoin. About 90% of them had never heard of Bitcoin or owned Bitcoin before. So I got them to actually set up on an exchange, buy the Bitcoin, send the Bitcoin to the wallet. They couldn't just give us cash and kind of fast forward that step. So that's what the 88 Sats came from, and very successful. And we actually started buying it. We launched January 3rd, 2023. The price was about under $20,000 per Bitcoin when we all bought our Bitcoin. And so it's 5x since then in 2 years. So people are like, they're really happy, obviously, with their small investment, but they can see the vision here. They can see the long-term time preference. And so I'd say what they can learn from me is like, that doesn't have to be golf. That doesn't have to be specific to golf or a golf course, but apply that in your own life. If you have if you have a church, if you have a community, if you have a dojo club, like implement Bitcoin into that, sell people on a vision, get them to buy into it. You can't do that in the fiat world where everybody puts $200 in, and in 10 years you think you're going to get a golf course out of that. That's going to turn into nothing, never mind a golf course. But if you just think about that and you apply that to anything in your life, like I think that's going to be such a huge thing in terms of like different community funds, different projects. People are going to use Bitcoin to save or jump, put something into life that never existed before. So it just changes your whole perception. And I think that Bitcoiners, especially at this stage of the game, they have the ability to make life changing decisions like that with people and educate them and get them thinking about different Bitcoin differently. The whole thing.
It's really fascinating when we think about that, what Bitcoin actually can do on an individual level and what implications that then has on society level. If you just like take your life and my life to example of that, maybe we're extreme, but extrapolate that out just with like 20% of society. This is huge. And I think people, I just always come back to that thing, like we are not bullish enough. it's on the implications and the output of Bitcoin. Yeah, really cool. We have an interview in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And your question from the previous guest is, are you mining Bitcoin? If no, why not? If yes, why and how?
Right here, they're kind of annoying.
Oh, is that a BitX?
BitX. I got two of them. I got one right here and then one, where is this? Right there. Nope, over here somewhere, right there.
Oh yeah, I see it.
So 2 BitXs in here. I haven't hit a block reward yet that I'm aware of. So yes, I am mining Bitcoin. This is kind of new. I got them about 6 months ago. I don't think that, I'm not banking on a 3.125 Bitcoin to show up on my wallet, but it was very interesting to kind of go through the process of connecting it to the network, connecting it to a pool, putting my address in there. And one day I might wake up and there might be 3.125 Bitcoin in my wallet, which would be absolutely insane. So the answer is yes, I am mining Bitcoin. I'd like to do it on a bigger scale. I think that especially here in Manitoba, where it's like minus 30 in a month, like people will be using Bitcoin mining as in replace of a furnace or something like that, where it makes sense to subsidize the energy costs.
I'm actually also looking right now a little bit more into mining because there's some interesting use cases, especially if you have a business. You might can invest profits into Bitcoin mining, which can offset some taxes and stuff like that. So it might be interesting because my thinking is like, before I give it the government, I rather give it to Bitcoin miners and reinvest the money and do something with that, especially if I can maybe even benefit from that financially if the Bitcoin mining service is good. And I can secure the network, contribute to the security. But my just question is like, how do I do it? And that's where I just really go a little bit deeper now, because BitX is great for learning about it.
That's what it's for, pretty much.
Exactly, yeah. And the chance of actually hitting a block is so low. It's a little bit like playing the lottery. I guess it's better than playing the lottery. You're also probably even higher than playing in the lottery, but it's not for actually a business case. But I'm really curious of like how I could do it, and I just try to inform myself because I cannot set it up myself
I'm
here.
the same way. That's why we got podcasts, so we're not actually working on electrical things.
Yeah, first of all, that, and you then also have to have access to cheap electricity.
Yeah.
And if you really want to do it, you kind of have to do it on a little bit of a bigger scale, and do that. And what if like you have a job to do, and then like there's a Bitcoin miner going broke, like you have to maintain it, you maybe have to replace something and repair it and all that stuff. Like it's an own business. If you want to do Bitcoin mining full time, like that's it, like that's your business. There's a lot to do in there. So and that's why I'm kind of thinking, okay, how can I contribute to the network? How can I benefit from that also and do it in an economic viable sense without doing, I don't know, 2 hours per day or 1 hour per day maintenance and stuff like that. Even like 5 hours per week would be too much for me because I really want to focus on the podcast. So yeah, I'm really interested in that right now. Perfect. Yeah. Then, sorry, you wanted to say something to that?
No, I was just going to say, like, I talked about, being here in Canada where it's cold for 6 months a year. And I don't think even though we do have cheap electricity here in Manitoba, like we have hydropowered energy. And before Bitcoin, I had no idea about energy. I just knew that when you flipped a light switch, the lights came on. But I've been absolutely fascinated by energy since learning about Bitcoin. But it doesn't really make sense for me to set up 10 miners in the yard and try to make Bitcoin off of that. You'll get some non KYC Bitcoin, which people think will be valuable. But the real thing for me, and I think that this is where it's going to go like mainstream, and that's why I don't hold any like mining stocks or anything, because I think it's going to be so decentralized. But like right now, the furnace is running in here because there's snow on the ground. So right now, if you think about that electricity that we're paying for, it's going into this furnace. And that's about it. The furnace isn't earning me any money. It's pumping out heat, it's sending it through the vents, but I'm just paying it. Whereas if you replace that furnace with a couple Bitcoin miners, it's still going to be pumping heat through the vents. It's still going to be heating this house, but it's subsidizing the costs that I'm paying for it. So in that sense, it makes it in that when you look at it that way, it just makes a whole lot of sense. And usually when things make sense, it eventually catches on. So I think that probably in the next couple of years, like I'll replace my furnace with Bitcoin miners, but this was just kind of my first start into it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's also a long journey for me. Really cool. Thank you so much, Jor, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask your questions, see your show? Where are you reachable?
So the channel's called 88 Sats Radio. You can just type that into YouTube. And the show that I do is called The Daily Bitcoin Journey. And I do it every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time on this side of the pond. And that's probably it. If you like the golf stuff, if you're a golfer, you can go to kinggolf.ca, and we got some really nice apparel and products on there. So that's kind of we got the Bitcoin stuff and we got the golf stuff, two things that I enjoy doing, and make a little bit of money on it to at least feed Arnie here.
Is that a dog?
He's sleeping, yeah.
Thank you so much, Jor, for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.